Welcome to White Pill Radio, the every other episode version of Theology on Air that is post-apologetic, ultimately hopeful, applied theology that looks at news and current events from a Christian worldview. I like to say that this is blessed talk, but not happy talk. So, thanks for joining us for this episode. As we dig into some really interesting stories, Lil Nas X apparently making a comeback, Zuckerberg's building a big old bunker, gonna have some elite parties maybe when the world ends down there in Hawaii, and what the Methodist Church is up to. As always, we like to always check in on our Methodist friends, but we'll be talking about all that on this episode of Theology on Air. So glad you could join us for this episode, and I am joined, as always, almost all the time, although she did miss our last, I think, White Pill Radio, Sarah Stone.
Hey, guys.
The great leader, the undisputed champion of Theology by the Pint.
Retweet. Although I'm self-appointed, so maybe that makes me like an evil dictator or something.
Yes.
Yeah, she's been up for re-election for quite a while.
Yes.
No elections are happening.
Yeah.
Yes. You're the Mussolini of all theology events. So anyway, and a new face, a new voice, Skyler. Introduce yourself, please. Tell people where they can find you.
Skyler Womack, you can find me in downtown or greater Houston area, but mostly on social media, all platforms. Used to be in ministry in the digital space and also in like a missions front globally. And then now I run a social impact creative agency firm, and we service grassroots organizations, ministry, nonprofits all over the world. So
what does that mean, social impact?
Anything with social conscious people-driven product or service.
Okay.
So a lot of corporate structures that want to have a 501c3 entity and vice versa.
Oh, okay.
So yeah,
gotcha. So if, say, Facebook, for example, wanted to, I don't know, help with elections or something like that.
Oh my gosh! Here we go. We're in it.
Well, it was a 501c3, but they would have like a corporation could have a C3 aspect where they do good.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Social enterprise model. That's our whole shtick. I think we try to stay out of elections.
Yeah.
And more just towards general donation, but we'll leave that up to you.
Cool.
So yeah.
Okay. And you want to give a website or?
Sure. Confidantco.com. Confidantco.com. So we're confidants to organizations on the ground because they trust us to tell their story.
Cool.
So,
and theologybythepint.com.org. I noticed today, out of habit, I went to HoustonTOT.com. It still works. It takes you right to theologybythepint.com, but that's where you go to find out about our events, our people, what's coming up. We've got an event in Sugar Land a week from today. Do we still have tickets for that?
Yes. Okay. You should all sign up. Sure. January 18th. We're going to be talking about, is social justice biblical justice? So obviously talking about what is social justice warriors. We've got kind of a little bit of a get off my lawn kind of guy, and then like a more progressive guy. They're going to kind of go toe to toe, and then we'll tease it out. Evan's going to be on the panel.
Yeah.
So there'll be two cranky get off my lawn guys.
Yeah, when we team up, it's like get out of our neighborhood.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. But anyway, that'll be fun. Okay, anyway, theologybythepint.com to learn more, learn how to give to support this,
Yeah.
That would always be a good thing. Okay, well, let's jump in. I mentioned Facebook earlier.
Yeah.
Formerly known as, now Meta. And you had mentioned there's an article where some plans sort of got out that Mr. Zuckerberg is, I don't know, building a bunker or something?
Yeah, so right before Christmas, it got, I guess, leaked. He didn't want people to know that Mark Zuckerberg is creating, well, it's not just a bunker. It's this massive build in Hawaii, which, of course, conspiracy theorists are jumping on right away because Hawaii is protected by the waters. And if, something big happens, some kind of nuclear war, whatever, they would have a little bit more insulation before things got to them. They have a naval base. On and on it goes. I don't know about all that. What I do know is what struck me is he's spending so much money on this thing and trying to build it very quickly. So here's just a little bit from the article. It says, Mark Zuckerberg is reportedly building a sprawling 100 million Hawaii compound, which, by the way, I've only been to Hawaii once. $100 million?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, sorry. $100 million.
Okay.
I've been to Hawaii once, and I was already annoyed that sometimes if you want to go from point A to point B on Maui, you have to take this long circuitous route because of Oprah Winfrey's land. So I'm going to need these rich people to stop blocking the way. But anyway.
Our taxes are obviously not high enough.
Oh my
Can I get an amen?
But anyway, okay. So he's building this compound complete with an underground bunker and its own food and energy sources in a secret project, suggesting the social media mogul is trying to conceal his doomsday preparations. Dun, dun, dun. The Facebook founders complex called Kulau Ranch is already partially constructed. It's shaping up to be one of the most expensive personal construction projects in modern history. This came out in Wired magazine, and then more stuff has come out. So it's going to have all this stuff above ground, but then a big bunker underground. And I could not care less if that's how he wants to spend his money. There's nothing controversial or immoral if he wants to do that. My thought immediately, because the question everybody's asking is, what does he know that we don't know? Right? Like he's in prepping mode. So does he have his finger on the pulse of something big that's coming? And my thought, if you've ever gotten into a conversation with me about if there was a zombie apocalypse, I'm always like, take me out in the first wave. I have no desire to be in some dystopian.
Here's my name. Here. Buy right here.
Exactly. I don't need to be like essentially camping through like a lifeless, burned up planet. And part of why I say that is because, so I'm taking this from the joke to the reality.
You do know he's already a zombie, right?
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
moving on.
Just affirms the thesis. Okay.
Yeah.
Continue.
I think sinking this much money and effort into something like this says something about how he views his life, and that he views it as this is his only life. Whereas we have an eternal perspective. And so I don't think any of us would put this much energy or money into building a bunker. I said this at Evan's house before Christmas, and you were like, I'd build one. And I said, and I stand by this, I actually don't think you would, because we know that we have eternity. Like eternity is built into our hearts. We have the hope of the gospel that we are going to live with in the new heavens and the new earth. So we don't have to fear death the way that people who only think we get one life do. Right. So we can use it. I mean, we still pursue survival and pleasure. It's not to say like we should just kill ourselves or something, but I don't think we need to panic in like major preparation like this.
So what's interesting is he's not the only billionaire that's thinking of this outliving their lifetime. Right. So you have Elon Musk, human is a multi-planet species. And then you have Elon Musk, who has created
who was the first one you said?
Elon Musk, and then Jeff Bezos. Sorry, the second one, who's created a clock that could last 1,000,000 years in a bunker, in a tunnel bunker in Texas at his ranch. So you have these billionaires thinking about this idea of like immortality almost. And that's kind of like a scratch that they can itch. So it's interesting that all of them are doing this within the last 2 to 3 years because, and I don't know if they know something we don't, but I think it's definitely part of ego is a part of it. Like something that they've created can outlast their lifetime. A legacy project. And I think it's this idea and fear of death too, which is interesting, which if you have a faith-based background, specifically being a follower, it's that is not a concern for you anymore. Right. So, yeah.
It tells me he knows the metaverse was a total flop. because if the
otherwise you just upload to there.
Exactly. So, that's not going to really work out.
Yeah, digital infrastructure is not fulfilling that itch for him.
We did a podcast years ago with Clay Jones, who wrote a book about these immortality projects that people pursue. And some of them are things like leaving a legacy in like your work, your authorship or whatever. And some of them, these longevity projects he talked about, or immortality projects, are things like super health focused. Like we should always be focused on good health, but there's a point at which it gets to be an obsession because if you actually believe this is the only life you get, then every moment you're not making your life better or longer is wasted because this is it. Of course, at some point there's a bell curve where you get you get to the point of diminishing returns, right? Because you're doing so much to make this life longer that this life is no longer fun or enjoyable because you're just, I don't know, eating tofu and doing push-ups all day long or something.
I mean, I will say, I think there's a growing awareness that we have come to rely on extremely complex systems. Globalization has done this. We actually talked about this quite a bit on our food podcast a few months ago with Meredith Mills. I think COVID revealed our problematic supply chains. I think it would be wise for people to have temporary provisions set aside. I mean, I'm not going to sell, 5-gallon buckets of food or something like that, but it would be wise. There's a reason like more and more people, have chickens and like are trying to like figure out how to grow food in on their own or keep some food set aside, keep some water set aside. I mean, we have a big freeze coming in Houston this week and I'm like, need to put a couple of 5-gallon buckets.
We need a bunker.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm kind of like, I should have bought the generator, because last time this happened, the system broke. So I think I do think that smart people know that in the future, we don't have enough people with enough passed down skills of how to make things, of how to keep systems going. They're hoping artificial intelligence will balance it out. I think our government is almost in a free fall. I mean, it's incapable of being honest enough to do basic things like hold elections. I mean, we kind of do, but people don't trust them. Whether or not that's a conspiracy theory, I'm just telling you, people don't trust our election process.
Yeah, on both sides, that's true.
Yeah, there's many, many processes, food, government, medicine, supply chains. I mean, China makes most of our antibiotics. So I think that there's very good reasons to learn how to become more self-sufficient, that as a national project, we should be trying to disentangle ourselves from all over the world, become a constitutional republic once again, become self-reliant, have our own oil and gas, grow our own food, keep it here, and let other countries, kind of figure it out. So, but I think there's a...
Wow.
That
was a lot.
Yeah.
This is what Devin does.
That didn't even... Okay.
Well, I think it boils down to that, like, at an individual level, people have this, like, anxiety, and they're like, what do? I build a bunker.
But there's some sort of sweet spot where there's wisdom to be prepared for if things get dark and crazy. If there is some sort of civil unrest and whatever, or the banks collapse or whatever. But there is a line, and I don't know exactly where it is, where Christians can say, you know what, if it comes, it comes, because I know where I'm going and I know how this ends and I know who I'm going to be with forever. So yes, have some wisdom so that you're not completely unprepared. Don't go into a hurricane without water or whatever. But then you get this kind of absurdity where you're spending bajillions of dollars on what? Like, so that you can be the only family.
And to be really cynical about it, like, what could he have done with that money for humanity? I mean, I think that's a little bit too easy of a ploy.
Can we turn it on the church?
Yeah.
How many times does the local church on the Western Stand front build something claiming it's eternal when it's a self-proposition business scheme?
Like what?
Like,
I'm not disagreeing.
Mega churches?
Like mega churches.
Yeah.
Like, I think anything can be thrown under the Lord's will,
yes.
right? And so it's easy for us to like look at billionaires that have discretionary, like 500 million is nothing to this cat, right? But from a global scale of a Western church, I think we think that as a church that we can build up a campaign and infrastructure and claim it as this outliving our lifetime.
Yep.
When in reality,
there's legacy projects there too.
Yeah,
for
like
sure.
the turnover rate, especially you mentioned COVID, like we see how well the eternal church infrastructure, if we're relying on a lot of the same metrics like institutions, membership actually last, right? So I think the call to action would be, what do we actually identify as eternal?
Ooh.
Like, what's actually the win of us building something that actually lasts, for Peter 1, through the fire that is just pure gold?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. It's a good question.
It's a good question.
But I will defend churches building buildings. I think that's okay to do. But
of course.
Right.
But at the time of the Reformation, it was like the indulgence that Luther was objecting to was literally a fundraiser for
I think what I'm getting at is I'm anti-institution. And I think Western church has become a institution conglomerate because it's easier to organize. I get that from like a business perspective, from an organizational perspective. But I think from an investment eternally, to build up something that actually lasts, it can't be an institution. It's got to be this organic, collaborative, actual community of a church.
Yeah, it'd be interesting if you went to some of these mega churches and said, hey, if we were to give you $1 million in addition to what you already have, like, how would you use that? I wonder how much of it would be like, we're going to build more space or we're going to put out more programs, and how much would be like, we're going to help,
Which that's a need. Like that needs to happen.
Again, it's that bell curve, right?
And like what actually is going to something that will last in 100 years.
Yeah.
Well, see, I think you actually need institutions if something is going to last in 100 years.
Interesting.
Now I agree that institutions have their pitfalls, their downfalls, their temptations. It becomes about keeping the institution alive. There's an institutional life cycle of about 75 years. So toward the end of that life cycle, you have to kind of rethink, rebrand, revitalize, something like that. But something like the family is an institution. Structurally speaking. So I do think though that like if we do want to like pass down something from generation to generation. We do need to, at some degree, think institutionally. But let me ask you this.
Yeah.
Because you sound a little hopeless. You know what I mean? Like, and I'm over here.
No,
like,
I'm so hopeful that I don't need a bunker,
I hear you.
which is great news for my budget.
No, I hear you. Okay, but like, what about the people that say survived the Black Death? You know, in whatever the 13 to 1500s, whenever it came and went, and you would have, in some cases, half to 2/3 to 3/4 of a town, destroyed. Would it have been best to say, take me, or would it have been best to say, I hope I survive so that I can rebuild? It's going to be hell, but I want to rebuild, this town, this country, this Christian civilization, after.
Well, I was actually talking about this with a friend recently, and he was like, well, but shouldn't you stay alive to tell people about Jesus so that they can actually have the same eternity that you're having or whatever? And I was like, okay, fine. Maybe don't take me out in the first wave. So yeah, listen, I know a couple things. I know my survival instinct will kick in if something like this actually happens. And I also know that I am not my own. I belong to the Lord. So I am going to go out whenever he takes me. That said, I can still say that I'm not going to invest so many of my resources now in just self-preservation and self-protection. And because do you think that Mark Zuckerberg is thinking to himself,
No.
How many people can I rescue if like the apocalypse comes? I mean, he may be thinking about friends that he wants to be in the bunker with him. I would be. That'd be so fun. But that's the difference, right? It's the mindset. Like I am not afraid of death because I think this is all there is. That's all I'm saying.
Yep.
And it might depend. Is it like supply chains break down or it's actual zombies? Because
Well, that's why I said there's a line, right? Like, anyway.
Yeah.
But listen, if Mark Zuckerberg is listening, and he probably is, and you do want to invite me and some of my favorite people, like
Then
we will
won't
come.
we won't be offended anymore.
And it's Hawaii. Like we'll live up on the ground level until times get tough.
What's funny is he posted a picture on his Instagram today. I don't know if you saw this, but they were playing Zombie Apocalypse Call of Duty in the bunker.
Oh.
It's just like a funny spiel.
That's very meta.
Very meta.
Oh, meta.
Which
That's
is-
meta too.
Wow.
Double meta. It's like Inception in here.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to something
Okay.
else.
Well,
Yeah.
admittedly, this is from Breitbart, but I think it's pretty much straight reporting. Breitbart being a more conservative, I guess, website. But I think it's pretty much straight reporting. It's from December 28th. The Methodist Church of Great Britain labels terms husband and wife, quote unquote, offensive. A couple of paragraphs from the article. The Methodist Church of Great Britain has called on its ministers, deacons, and elders to stop using offensive terminology such as, quote, husband and, quote, wife, to avoid making assumptions that are not, quote, the reality for many people. The church added the changes to its, quote, inclusive language guide, an initiative aimed at preventing the use of, quote, hurtful language. Sorry for all the quotes, but I want to let you know what's, they're saying.
In quotes, yeah.
Directed at groups the Methodist Church believes have been,
Quote.
marginalized and or demonized by common culture, end quote. The church plans to update the inclusive language guide every 6 months to avoid using language that could offend groups it perceives as marginalized. The church wants its leaders to begin using terms such as partner, child, and parent as a way of recognizing that, quote, relationships come in many varied expressions.
Well, that's true.
Maybe the craziest thing about all this is that it plans to do this like every 6 months.
Right. That's what sticks out to me.
Like, what does that tell you about what is happening to language, to our understanding of things? We are on like this exponentially fast roller coaster of social change where we don't even have the permanence of man, woman, husband, wife.
It says later in the article they don't say brothers and sisters in Christ either because of their non-binary friends.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how would you define what's too far and how would you define what's okay to change? Because the N-word was used pretty flippantly 50 years ago. And now, like, we definitely don't say that now.
For sure.
So surely church language should change some, right?
Yeah.
Well, was it used in the church?
Oh, I'm sure. 50 years ago?
Maybe some churches.
I don't know. Now, I will say, I am reading a book right now by a kind of former son of this congregation, Leon Jaworski, who was the Watergate prosecutor, Nuremberg prosecutor, was a big-time lawyer for a lot of years, but he spent some time in this church. And so I found this memoir he wrote, and I'm reading it. And he does talk about how in Waco, and this was in like 1921, there was a massive KKK parade that one sheriff stood against in this town, which is quite an interesting story. And he stood against it on the grounds that you cannot have anonymous parades because if things go bad, you don't know sort of who to hold accountable. This is kind of interesting. But, sorry, the question was, could language change? Well, some language could change, I guess. I mean, I don't think it would ever be appropriate for the N-word to be used. But like something as fundamental as male and female, and that's really what this comes down to.
Well, husband and wife is the first thing.
Yeah.
Right.
So to answer your question, I think it's something like who's making those decisions. I think there's a pretty universal understanding the N-word is just exceedingly hurtful and demeaning and gross. And but who decided that husband and wife were
the same thing, demeaning and gross. Yeah.
Or it says offensive. Like, so what's funny is I assume it's offensive to people who are husbands and wives because otherwise you wouldn't care if it was offensive to other people. Like when I hear that you are a husband, that doesn't offend me. Is it the actual husbands and wives that don't want to be called that?
No, I would assume it's
the other way around.
People in safe-sex relationships or marriages
don't want to hear other people referred to.
Correct. More of an inclusive, that's my partner.
Okay, so two guys that are married don't want to be called each other's husbands.
Or a wife. Does that make sense?
Well, you wouldn't call another man a wife.
Well, correct. So I think that's the inclusive part that our community
okay, so
is
just
asking
even
for.
having those terms.
Correct. It
is
doesn't
the
box.
assumption of
Yes.
heteronormative, whatever. Got it.
But if the Bible's heteronormative, then,
I think that's where the Methodist community is split on.
Yes.
So.
Yeah.
Well, that's for sure where they are. Is this church one of the ones that went?
Well, this is in Great Britain. So it's actually not in America. And I don't even know how many Methodists there are in Great Britain. And, the Methodist Church in America, I guess the United Methodist Church, I don't know what, I don't know that I would imagine that now that you've had about 25% of all the conservative churches leave, most of them joining the Global Methodist Church. If Meredith were here, she could maybe tell me I'm wrong on this, but I would be shocked if you didn't see these sorts of resolutions coming in the United Methodist Church in the next few years. It's exactly what happened in the ELCA. Once the conservative contingent leaves, once they're outvoted, then you have a departure.
When the cat's away, yeah.
And then you have super duper majorities of very left-wing people. And then actually they start fighting among each other because you have litmus tests of, purity tests and all that, who's actually progressive enough and that sort of thing. That's going to happen. The United Methodist Church is going to eat itself alive, unfortunately. All the liberal churches pretty much do. So
jump in anytime if you.
That's great. I'll let them have it.
No, I'm not saying that's a good thing or bad thing.
Let's go back to this idea of at what point should a church re-examine the language that they use?
Yeah. Hey guys, Sarah here. Sorry to interrupt what I'm sure is an amazing podcast episode, but I just wanted to tell you that Theology by the Pint is growing. We are now a 501c3 nonprofit organization and we're expanding. This coming year, with your help, we'll grow our reach by adding events in multiple Houston suburbs, as well as launch a youth version. Don't worry, those will be pints of iced coffee, not beer. We're adding follow-up conversations to reach the spiritually curious and the unchurched. We're also growing our connections and partnerships with more local churches, and you can help us grow by praying for us, by telling your friends or church about us, and of course, by partnering with us financially. To donate, go to theologybythepint.org/give. If each of our podcast listeners gave $100, we would reach our annual budget right then. Consider donating today. Okay, enjoy the rest of the show.
I would say if the language can be proven to be unbiblical. That I mean, as a Protestant, that's my standard that's my sole authority. So,
yeah,
not when someone's feelings are hurt, though.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. The Bible says not to let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouth. So I think I would want to compare it against the lists we have from Paul, especially in the New Testament, about how to treat each other.
Yeah. I think that's like where the issue and conflict is there's different interpretations by different communities when it comes down to the authoritative word. So.
Which we will be doing an event about in March. So March 19th, if you want to hear a couple people spar about what he was just saying.
Plug.
What is that? What is that topic?
The topic is, does the Bible sometimes get it wrong?
Oh, right.
Exploring inerrancy, inspiration, and other I words. But yeah, like how can we trust the Bible? How do we know it's authoritative? All that kind of jazz.
But what is offensive about husband and wife? How could that possibly
that it's putting
be
people in the
offensive?
box of
Correct.
Yeah.
Heterosexual.
If people, I guess I'm done kind of I don't know. I mean, pacifying this notion that we are put in box. God put us in boxes. We have boxes. They're called male and female. Those are the biblical categories. Those are the only two categories. So if we want to raise our fist at God and say, "I'm not what you made me," I guess that's your right. But I would say repent, because that is an absolute sin to say to God, "I am not what you made me to be. I am going to live outside of categories that you have given." I mean, husband and wife, you cannot have two husbands. It doesn't make sense. A husband is a husband to a wife. You can have both, you can have neither, but you can't do some other combination of those things.
Well, and this goes even beyond that. Like, even if you could kind of assent to the LGB, then you get into this, they also want child and parent, because they don't want mother and father. Son or
it all
daughter.
comes down to male, female. Yeah.
Right. But it's not just about homosexuality. It's also about actual identity as a person, which that part is more cringe for me, but they didn't ask me. So
yeah, they should have, huh?
I know.
They're kind of
Listen, I watched every episode of Poldark, so I know a lot about Methodists in England. So they should have.
I mean, hey, it's a free country. I mean, relatively, even in Great Britain. I mean, they're free to do this. I think the track record of churches going this direction is basically suicidal. If I'm wrong, great. I mean, but
I want to just quick tangent. What's your thoughts on the Pope giving out a PR statement towards same sex in tandem with the Progressive Catholic Church in Germany?
Yeah. Well, we did talk about this the last episode, and I think it's extremely confusing, for one. I think it's not good, too. And I don't understand it at all. I mean, it's obvious to me that the upper leadership of the Catholic Church is very progressive, and it's only a matter of time before they essentially either redefine marriage or they bless everything that's not marriage with some new understanding of blessing. I think to beat a dead horse about this, I think we need to stop. This whole conversation has been thrown off track because we speak about it in a profoundly unbiblical way. We have hijacked the Bible by saying that there are these categories of a gay person, and the Bible never speaks of that. There is male and female, and there are sex acts that are inappropriate, period, including adultery, including rape, including incest, including sodomy, including bestiality. Full stop. Any kind of way, any way of saying, but I'm born this way to justify that is infantile and totally sinful and objectionable to God. So, I mean, that would be like saying, well, I'm a born thief, so I can steal. I'm a born adultery, so I'm a born murderer, da, da, da. No, this is not okay. There are no categories by which you can justify sin. So how in the world can the Catholic Church say there is this understanding of self that allows for this blessing, but it's not a sacramental blessing, it's a side thing? I think I think what it's going to end up doing, if you on a long enough timeline, and by that I mean maybe only a decade, I think, and I wrote an essay about this somewhere on our blog, basically saying I think there's a real possibility of a massive schism in the Roman Catholic Church. I mean, Reformation,
or a schism even,
or a schism, either one. Like Reformation sized. I have no clue how this goes on, and I think churches like my own, which specifically left a larger denomination, or the Global Methodist Church, or the Evangelical Covenant Order, or all these denominations that have formed, leaving these mainline liberal churches that have gone that direction. It's about 20-25% of those congregations. I think we're going to find ourselves in a really small minority with quite possibly no legal rights and no protection from the larger churches like the Catholic Church. And I think in the next 10 years, I hope you'll visit me in prison.
So talk about hopelessness. Good grief.
Yeah.
So
I'm just saying, I think that's a possible trajectory.
Sure. I wouldn't want to be in church leadership in the next 10 years. I'll tell you that. I think that just talks to the burnout rate that even pastors experienced over COVID. And I mean, you think about like huge leadership, even in the Houston area, that weren't able to last because it was just kind of a culminating, even in 2020 with BLM protests, LGBTQ. And I think, speaking for the evangelical church, I think my heart for a church here in the West, not talking for Great Britain, is how can we make a more inclusive family? How can we create a more inclusive space for a marginalized community to feel welcome in the church without having to compromise that church's core value and biblical perspective?
So here's a question for you, because what you just said sounds ideal,
sure,
but almost impossible.
Correct.
So one of the lines in this talks about using a person's chosen pronouns. And so if you move beyond like he, him, she, her to some of the JJ, and there's now like so many that I don't even know. Is that the kind of thing you're talking about? Like having a church that actually uses whatever language
for me,
someone asks?
like personally, I'm not going to speak on behalf of churches. Like, what is it a big deal for me to put my pronouns in my email signature? Like, that is not a big deal. It doesn't come out with a huge, big statement piece. If that makes a more affirming, inclusive space for someone to feel welcome, then I'm going to do that. Like,
okay, but
that is low-hanging fruit.
That's a little bit different than using JJ or something.
Correct. And I think that's the tension.
Yeah.
And why I wouldn't want to be a pastor in the next 10 years.
I like
that.
Is it. My answer is I don't want to be in that situation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I think that there can be strides that an evangelical community can make with an already marginalized community is feeling. And so unless as a church, we just make this like global agreement that, okay, the LGBT is just going to go to the Methodist church or progressive churches. That's it. And that's the line.
Yeah.
And they're not, but if that's the case, then the global church and more conservative crowd cannot be mad that they're only getting that theology taught to them.
Yeah.
You see what I mean?
Say that again.
But
they can't be mad when they get what?
They can't be mad that there are
oh yeah, I see what you're saying.
Do you see what I mean?
Well, that's exactly what I said. I said, well, I think it's suicide, but if they want to do it, it's a free country. That's what I said. I'm offended on God's behalf for them, for God, I guess. But
I guess there is some space, and I don't know how this looks, where you can be welcoming and kind and loving to any community and still uphold what the Bible says about these things. So for instance, like, would you put it in your signature line? I don't have strong feelings about that, although I know how I react when I see it in someone's signature line, a little eye roll on my end, but whatever. But if someone comes to my Bible study and it's clearly a woman, it's a women's Bible study, so this could get awkward, but it's clearly a man saying that he is now a woman and I should call him by her, she. Am I going to be kind to that person? Yes. Am I going to give them a meal and invite them in? Yes. Am I going to go along with this, what I think is a really warped view of who they are and who God made them to be? No, but that's also born out of love. Like, I'm going to, in the kindest way possible. First of all, I'm going to do all kinds of verbal gymnastics to not even have to use a pronoun, right, for a while. But I think entering into that sort of delusion is also harmful. And that's a word that keeps getting used, harmful. Like, which is more harmful?
Long term, yeah.
Does it only go one way? Like, do you respect my right to understand?
So I would say yes, and that's not talked about enough. I think from a lot of conservative Christians, there's an assumption that community member of the LGBTQ community would not respect of someone standing on their core convictions.
Yeah.
And I think even when I was on staff at a major conservative church, there was plenty of like same-sex relationships and couples walking in, and they were like, we're just curious. Like, what does this church believe? And then we'd sit down and then we just like hash it out in our little connection center. Mm-hmm. And that's like, it wasn't controversial. It wasn't high conflict area. It was just like understanding.
Yeah.
Like I'm not trying to change their mind. They're not trying to change mine. I'm just listing out why we believe what we believe.
Yeah.
I mean, I will say, I think we should be done fighting about this. There's no reason to keep talking about it. Why bring it up? Every denomination has a gay version of it. There's the gay version of the Lutheran Church. There's the gay version of the Methodist Church, if you will. I mean, I'm not saying it's only dominated.
I'm just picturing their websites. Gay Methodist, like, okay.
But like
an affirming version.
There's an affirming version of Presbyterians, of everything. So I can't. I don't know to a degree. I think the battle lines have been drawn. The sides have been chosen. Will it end here? No. It won't end. I have a reason for that, I think, but that's because I don't even know that this is about gay. in the other issues. It's
more about identity.
Yeah, I think it's a symptom of a larger rebellion against God, and I think the church is always going to have a pressure point applied and say, give on this issue, give on this issue. This is just the issue of the day. There'll be others.
There always have been in the church long before this one. Yeah.
But I mean, this article just serves to say, I mean, this just reveals the chasm. This is an unbridgeable gap. There is no future alliance between the conservative Methodists in Great Britain and these Methodists in Great Britain. It does not exist, will not exist, will never come to be. There is no future in which the ELCA, the Lutheran liberals, Lutherans, and my denomination will ever reconcile. It will never happen. They will continue to shrink. They will become more and more leftist and progressive. They will paint themselves into a corner they will never be able to get out of. They will live off of confiscated properties of churches that will close down but are worth a couple $1,000,000. They'll do that as long as they possibly can. But it won't be a flourishing church. God will not bless it. And I think it's sad.
Wow.
But
I told you what you were getting into.
I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but it's just how I see it.
All right.
I mean, that last statement you made is interesting because it's controversial, but I agree. And that's the kind of thing you read all the time in the Old Testament, especially is like, if you do things the way that I've prescribed, you will be blessed. If you don't, it's not going to go well for you. And then you get all the way through the New Testament into Revelation. It's like, hey, remember that stuff? Like, you'll be blessed if you take this to heart. Yeah. And
I mean, God doesn't bless, adultery either. God doesn't bless racism. God doesn't bless
favoritism. Yeah.
Unjust scales. God doesn't bless greed. Right. Although temporarily we get away with it for a while.
Yeah.
Right. Sure. I mean, like a church that has a lot of money and is acting very selfishly. I mean, it can look good for a while. Like the name it and claim it, the prosperity gospel. I mean, they seem like they're getting away with it.
Sure.
But in the end, God won't bless that either. So it's not that I just want to pick on this issue. But
is there a hopeful thread you have to pull at here, or?
He's like, they're just not
that's just no, they're dying. Don't go that way.
Well, on a long enough timeline, I do think that God does bless, faithfulness to Him. And in the end, I think a lot of kind of progressivism or leftism. I mean, this whole discounting of the gender binary is itself suicidal. Not in a personal sense, but I mean, children are not being reproduced. Families are not enlarged. You don't have generational blessings. So
wasn't that a blessing because we have a lack of food infrastructure? And that's
sorry, he's going back to the
okay. Next topic.
But let's talk basketball.
Basketball.
Lord help us.
Okay, so for the Houston community, you'll get a kick out of this. College of Biblical Studies. I'm actually a fan of CBS. I think they serve a underserved community of pastors who are already full-time ministry, and they get to create a hybrid theological structure for them. Mostly pastors of people of color. And
I didn't know that.
Yeah. And have a lot of friends on staff, a lot of bivocational professors that give their time. Anyways, it's a great institution that's very small. Think of a small seminary Bible school.
Yeah.
Well, turns out, and I had to read on the Wall Street Journal, which why the Wall Street Journal would post about this, I don't know. It would should be on like ESPN. But I found out through a headline that they actually have a basketball team. And that came to my surprise because they got beat by 114 points, which doesn't surprise me.
141.
Excuse me, 141. Imagine first off, if I can pardon my French, why the hell do they have a basketball team? First off. Second off, it would be like we three got together a rec team and then decided to go play a D1 school. That was the extent
so offended right now. You don't
of so when we're talking about institutions and what we should be focusing on and essentials, I don't think college Bible schools should have athletics, period. And that kind of shows and proves the point. But I don't know, just something to think about.
Well, you said that a lot of them are already bivocational, right? They're in ministry and then they're going here to offset that or kind of pivot in their ministry careers.
And this is coming from a college athlete. So I played college ball and
what'd you play?
Football.
Okay.
So I played cornerback, defense. I tell people I was the fastest white boy I had a blast, right? Yeah. The amount of time to actually for that to be your craft, that needs to be like your life. And I don't think it does it justice for the school, for the student athletes, so on and so on.
And now their name is besmirched because they've made a fool out of them.
Well, they lost to Grambling, which is, in the historical black, what is that? HB.
Historically black universities, colleges.
Universities and colleges. I mean, it's kind of up there. But I mean, if they played, say, LSU, they'd get beat by, I think they did, in fact, play this year, maybe, and got beat by like 70 points or something. Right. So for them to beat, I'm talking in football, but athletically, I mean, there's no competition between a major Division I school. So yeah, part of what they talk about is how basically to get a guaranteed win, big schools will play down, kind of like that year Michigan played Appalachian State, right? The opening that in Appalachian State won, and it was like, and basically Michigan paid them to lose because that was how Appalachian State made money, right? Like LSU got beat by.
That's how they developed their program is they outsource their exhibition games to smaller schools for a guaranteed win, pack the stat sheet, and then the smaller schools get a huge boost to their football program.
Sounds and so they can reinvest. Though.
I mean, that's how you do it. I just don't understand.
They knew they were going to lose going in, but they got paid $5,000 to lose.
From a monetary standpoint, makes sense. Like, sign us up, we'll get destroyed. Yeah. We got beat one time by a Texas A&M secondary school, 99 to something, and then I went home later that night and saw myself on ESPN like top 10. It was terrible, and I understand, but we received so much money into the program, so it was kind of like semi worth it.
Take one for the team.
I want to take one for the team, but I don't want to be on ESPN
as a failure.
Failure, or the Wall Street Journal.
But from like a CBS College of Biblical Studies, I don't think they should even have athletic programs.
Yeah, that's a broader question. Which is, weird, is there a role? I mean, as an athlete, you can say. I mean, my son's kind of playing some competitive baseball. He's only 12, so. But like, what do you think of as the role of like sports or say discipline of the body? Body's your temple. You hear that a lot in sports. What do you think about that in terms of like a Christian outlook or like a?
I think it's fantastic from a community building standpoint. Mm-hmm. Like, I know that there's an ex-con community that plays basketball at 5 a.m. at the church. And I think that's beautiful. Mm-hmm. Like, that's a smart way for engagement on marginalized communities. It's a big community builder in a rec league sense. So from that standpoint, it's very productive. I don't know for institutions and higher education institutions like that, how productive it is from a...
What about like Liberty University, which we may talk about.
Liberty, different one, but
yeah. I mean, I think it's great from a community building standpoint. I'm sure they have recs, and then they have their official teams. I think it's great. Like, go at it. I mean, no one's looking at Tim Tebow's life and being like, "Oh, they shouldn't have done that."
Yeah.
But are you saying like from like almost a seminary, basically? Like, that's kind of silly.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
because
I think
it's small,
it's
because it's so pointed in its purpose and
correct.
Yeah, and like who they're serving.
I feel like it's a waste of resources.
I guess there we go. I think what they would probably say is they're trying to build up some prestige and eventually grow the school or something.
From a PR standpoint, they're failing.
Okay, losing that bad doesn't help for sure. Yeah. So,
we love you, CBS. We do.
Yeah.
We
it feels like a good time for our audience to know that I was actually the captain of my intramural volleyball team in college.
That's amazing. I
thought that's very relevant.
When you think you know somebody, you're just sitting next to them. Wow.
To be fair, it's just because I was really organized and made sure everyone was there on time. And
when I was in seminary, the students played the faculty every year in a pickup basketball game.
Oh, see, that's fun.
I think I might have scored one basket. I can't remember that. But,
great community building.
Well, I had never heard of College of Basketball Studies, so maybe this...
College of Basketball Studies? Amazing.
I'm sitting here reading it. And it's College of Biblical Studies.
Well, now they're on your radar.
Now they're on my radar, so maybe it worked. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. We can have a watch party for their next game.
Yeah.
I'm
okay,
joking.
Speaking of Liberty University, it apparently, according to Jerry Falwell, blessed memory, has a new student. He's some musician called Lil.
So
I just anyway.
L-I-L.
So tell us about Lil Nas X and what he's up to these days.
It's not his real name anyway, obviously. Lil Nas X. We actually talked about him on the podcast a couple of years ago because he had these sneakers that had like drops of blood in them or whatever. And I think he did, I don't know if I can say this next thing on air. I'll say it. You can edit it out if you want. He did like a lap dance for Satan. Like he was into the whole like Satanism, like because it's, so incendiary and it's controversial and everyone will pay attention. So that was a couple of years ago.
So basically he turned into a demon. After his crossover hit Old Town Road.
Oh, yeah. So he was part of the whole Old Town Road thing. Do you want to sing a little for our listeners?
I do not. But that song is in my head now, and I'm so mad at you about it. Anyway.
But he is making a comeback, in his words, a la Jesus Christ.
Did he spend all the money he got becoming a demon? So now he's got
He did not become a demon. Stop.
Okay.
I don't know anything about this man's finances. I don't know any of his songs. Though right before recording this, I did look up the lyrics for this song, which I will read a few of for you. But basically, he has a song that's coming out, I think today, because these articles came out a couple days beforehand. It's a new single called J Christ. And the imagery that he put out as like a teaser was him on a cross looking like Jesus. And then, of course, everyone freaked out, which is what he wanted. And we're saying that it was blasphemous. And he came back and said, oh, it's actually not blasphemous. This is what he said it says he broke his silence, which is just hilarious. What silence over the controversy on Tuesday. This is a quote from him. The crazy thing is nowhere in the picture is a mockery of Jesus. By the way, he is pretending to be Jesus on the cross. Okay. Yeah. Jesus' image is used throughout history in people's art all over the world, he tweeted. He continued, I'm not making fun of stuff. Y'all just got to stop trying to gatekeep a religion that was here before any of us were even born. Shut the F up. So just a charming character. But, you can go look this up, but the picture that was shown was these people hoisting up the cross with him on it. And there's a couple things to note here. One is, of course, it's a mockery of Jesus. Now, what he means is that he's not painting Jesus to be the bad guy. What he means is it's not villainizing Jesus. Yeah. And so, sure, he wants to be on Jesus' team because the words of the song, which I can't read many of without sounding really ridiculous, but it says, I'm back like J Christ. And he's talking about being in a comeback. He also has claimed that he is entering his Christian era. That's a little nod to Taylor Swift, the whole era thing.
Or Kanye West.
Or Kanye, yeah.
No.
And of course, it's maybe going to go study biblical studies. But there's a tweet I can't even read on the air where he came and said some really ugly things as he was talking about how he's a Christian now. I don't know if he's really a Christian or not. I mean, I'm dubious, but thankfully I don't have to make such decisions. But my thing is, what he's doing by putting himself as Jesus in the imagery is just as, or at least it's in the same sphere of, if you want to call it blasphemous or just gross, as the Satan stuff, because he's propping himself up as Jesus. And that's the problem. The problem is not so he talks about imagery of Jesus. There's imagery of Jesus all over the place, but it's to show veneration and respect to Jesus because we believe he's the Lamb of God that took away the sins of the world. Lil Nas X is not. So it wouldn't matter if it was him or even if it was a picture of Mother Teresa on the cross, we'd be like, ooh, no, because she didn't die on the cross to save us from our sins.
Yeah. So what was, I'm not familiar with this comeback that Jesus made. What?
Because he defeated death and then was resurrected, yo.
Oh, okay. So he's talking about the resurrection as a comeback. So
that's the greatest comeback ever.
Yeah. I mean.
Comeback.
Okay.
No one knew.
So Lil Nas X is comparing what?
His musical comeback.
A career slump?
Yes.
Okay, first of all, he's a controlled asset. He's not even like a musician. I mean, give me a break. He's a prop to the entertainment industry.
Are you glad you came to this?
Well, he is. Isn't it?
Just
do we think that these
Tell
people...
us how you really feel.
Do we think that these people just come out of... that they're just magnanimous, they're just incredible talent?
He's an industry plant, huh?
It's something. It's something like that.
He doesn't know what that means.
An industry plant?
Plant, yes.
Yeah, I think he's probably... well, I don't know. I can't say for sure if he's an industry plant. I can say that he is probably more like an industry slave. That's what I would say.
Sure.
Yeah.
What's offensive to you?
About this? Just the opportunistic grossness of it. He was like, I'm gonna get some attention, and the way I'm gonna do it is I'm gonna put myself in the position where Christ was. It's more of an eye roll from me. I can see through what it is. I don't think he really thinks he's Jesus.
Correct.
So, but it's just, it's gross. It's icky.
I will say it's an eye roll for me as a leaning left Christian.
Yeah.
And I think the conservative right church is
Like freaking out too much.
dumb if they freak out. Like you're actually doing what he wants, which is creating more PR, which then fuels the problem. And so just roll your eyes and just stay there. Yeah. Just like every time you see a Kanye tweet, just like roll your eyes because you know that it's going to blow by. Yeah. And you giving it more attention doesn't actually bring the solution. I will say on that topic, I don't think we as a church we typically take graphics like this and blasphemy kind of campaigns like this on the same level. We do not take it on the same level as actually what it means to take God's name in vain.
Okay, here we go. Let's preach. Yes.
So I think taking God's name in vain, he's not doing that. And we don't typically call out people who do by creating political agendas or personal agendas and slapping on a God-called agenda to it. And I think that's, if you're going to look at high level, what's actually more harmful would be the latter.
So are you talking about things like, political, aspiring political?
Like, let's just talk about the riots, right? Of January 6th, 8th. So that was something that was in God's name for a lot of people that attended and participated. I think that's more harmful than a picture. I think Jesus is more hurt personally by seeing his name being thrown into trying an attempt of overthrowing an empire than he is out of a picture of him.
Yeah, I can give you that.
You know what I mean?
Or like various, politicians like holding a Bible or going to a church when you know that the only reason they're there is because
that is more harmful than a picture of a single promotion
or the entire gospel prosperity gospel movement.
Correct.
That's all blasphemy.
Right. So why aren't we talking about that instead of an album endorsement that we don't realize we're even a part of propping up?
Part of the reason that I brought this up is because I think his response is interesting because, again, he's saying, well, I'm not mocking it. And I'm saying my problem with it is the same problem I have with what you're talking about, which is that anytime you're putting yourself in a position of idolatry and worship, that's offensive to the Lord. So, I mean, was the Lord already offended by that and by Trump and Biden and all kinds of people that have done this?
Sure.
Yes, but it's not because they're, sort of disrespecting his name. It's that they're putting themselves as him. That's the kind of bent that I wanted to bring to this is that anytime, and this is from the Garden of Eden on, you put yourself on the same pedestal or worthiness or space as the Lord, that's a problem. But I agree with you 100%.
Yeah.
Well, and his Twitter, his like avatar for Twitter is a one eye. So
here we go.
Here we go. I'm just saying.
Go there?
I'm just saying it's an eyeball. It's only one of them.
Do you know about what this means?
It's a one eye sign. Whatever. I mean, maybe look, whatever. I don't know. I will say this. I think he's part of his bona fides that he's like on this real Christian journey and part of his Christian era is that he's going to Liberty University. He's going to study things.
Oh, lucky.
So he has a letter from Jerry Falwell, who's dead and who has not made a comeback yet.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah. He's still dead, and I think his son is Jerry Falwell Jr. So
his son has.
It's a letter from Liberty University saying, "We're so glad you're attending our classes and whatnot." Well, that was community note on Twitter. It's a fake. So here's what I will say in all seriousness.
Maybe he can join CBS.
Oh my gosh!
He might not. I mean, he's 24. He's probably still a good basketball player.
Yeah,
and he might identify as a woman for all I know. Because anyway.
What? A woman? What does that have to do with anything?
Because it was a women's
basketball team.
Oh, did we actually say that?
No, I'm just making up.
I don't know.
Continue.
Okay, sorry.
Here's what I think is actually interesting is that Jesus has to be dealt with. Like Jesus still has to be dealt with. He is the ultimate cultural icon. That he is used. His image is manipulated. He's undefeated though. I mean, I remember when I was a kid, remember Madonna and Like a Prayer? I mean, that was some still to this day, I would say, quite scandalous imagery.
Yeah. I think if you have a problem with Lil Nas X, I'm looking at this. If you have a problem with Lil Nas X monetizing a disgusting imagery of Jesus on the cross, then start going to Jerusalem's gift shops and tell me that you don't feel the same way. And if you don't, then there's a double standard here.
Wait, what do you mean?
Tell us more about that.
I think Lil Nas X is not the only one monetizing off of Jesus' imagery.
Oh, okay.
And
You mean like Christian gift shops?
Correct.
Oh.
Or just even.
You don't have to
like
go to Jerusalem. You can go to
Right.
Rome.
Right. But I think there's space for that. But that's, again, the Protestant Reformation, all that caused that. But it's going to perpetuate.
It's opportunistic.
It's opportunistic in general.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people that I think don't see the dual two-sided coin to that.
People don't, but if they want to really like shock people don't pretend to be Muhammad or Allah or Hindu.
Yeah,
gods.
because
You die for that.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, there is that small fact, depending on where you are.
But it's interesting that it's like pop culture is, it seems like they're out of ideas. I mean, you have the Sam Smith guy dressing like the devil, on the Emmys and dancing around in fire. And it's like now Nas X is like, he's 24 years old. He has making a comeback. It's all so stupid. I mean, you have to be so stupid to even listen to this music. I'm sorry.
I think it goes back to like short term and long term. Short term, it's a great idea. Long term, even for its PR, I think it's a bad play because you can only be controversial for so long.
But if you really,
you ride that wave and then
because people are going to get tired of you. Look at Charlie Sheen.
Yeah. There's just, he made it pretty late. I mean, he was like still acting when he was in his 40s. This
right. But how long can he be controversial for?
Yes.
That's the point.
Where else do you go? I mean, where's the controversy? Well, like we live in a basically pornified world. That is everywhere. I just like. I mean, my adrenals are just burnt out. Like I just can't.
That's good. What you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can only ride the controversy wave so long, and then there's nothing else to.
Right.
But it seems like, I guess we'll just be blasphemous. We'll just do the devil and we'll do Jesus. And we'll just, I'm like, is that even, it's like old now. It's like they've been pretending to be
Maybe the
devils
next controversial thing is to just be wholesome.
Yeah.
Be so shocking. Maybe they should hire you guys to help them.
How dare you?
Yeah.
All right. Well, point is don't put a picture of yourself on a cross and things will go well for you.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I think we've gone about an hour, and I think we can call it a day. I had one other potential article, but one of these days, I think that at an in-person event, I do think, and I've proposed this, but it never quite wins the votes when people show up to our events and they say what they want us to talk about, but it's immigration. And even since I proposed that months ago, it's obviously a wide open border, and people are afraid about it. And there was an article about students aren't going to go to a school in Brooklyn because 2,000 migrants are going to stay there while a big storm blows through, and that's quite controversial, I think. But
well, listen, if you come to our event,
yeah,
this Thursday, by the time this goes out, it'll be this Thursday, and you're interested and you want to hear Evan and other people talk about that kind of thing, vote for it on the poll.
Yeah,
because we ask people every time what they want the next topic to be, and that'll be one of the choices. Yeah. So
it ends of there's a kind of really conservative, you might say, Christian camp that doesn't believe in sort of borders and nations, and then there's a kind of progressive end of that kind of would say the same. And so whether or not like nations sort of exist in God's sight, I think is an interesting question. Whether or not those nations have a right to defend themselves as nations, I think is an interesting theological question. Where does that sure. kind of a Christian community end, and
church and state, all that.
Yeah. So but anyway, but we're not going to go there. But
that's just the teaser for you.
Yeah. Okay. Where can people find you again? Other than apparently on ESPN somewhere?
Oh, I want to
find
go
that. So bad. Yes. Don't look up ETB in Texas. East Texas Baptist University. Okay. Small school, East Texas. Had a blast.
Cool.
But you can find me on confidantco.com and then on Instagram, Skyler Womack, Facebook, TikTok, all the things.
Cool. If you come to our events, sometimes he's there.
That's right. So, I'll have a pint in my hand. It'll be a good time.
Yeah. And everything you need to know about Theology by the Pint, including upcoming events, how to support us, what we're up to, who we are. You can stalk all of our leadership and read our bios, is theologybythepint.org. And there's some other ones too, but that's the one we're pushing.
Cool.
Yeah.
And I'm Evan McClanahan. I'm the pastor at First Lutheran, and we're at flhouston.org. So thanks for watching. Come back and see us again. Until next time, we encourage you to question freely, think deeply, and disagree as needed.